Hello. It is one of those days that's either Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at 10 o'clock. So that means that it's time for relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons. Today, there will be no painting. That has happened on this Apollo model fairly often, where there is no painting, because it's largely a matter of masking it and spray painting it, which I need to do off camera because there is no place to record the spray painting of the pieces. Hi, who? Oh, right on time. I will be doing a flip like right away. So let's just do that now. I'll do it right on top of the box here. As I was sort of cleaning up a little bit on Wednesday, I found another flip piece. This one says living on it. So apparently it's either living or not living. It's kind of ominous, isn't it? Let's see what happens. Living, that's good. Not living. 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 Not living. Not living. It's 3-3. It's like Schrodinger's cat, right? It's both living and not living in equal amounts. It doesn't say what's living or not living. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it came up 3-3. I just added that to my collection of flipping things. I've got like a pile of 6 or 7 little bits of wood there for flips. So as I was saying, this is either a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. How can you tell it's a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday? You can tell because it's about 10 o'clock and this stream is happening. So as I was saying that, well, this one happens to be a Friday. I am oriented to time and place frequently. But one thing is that when you're retired, especially retired for a while, and really retired, like not doing part-time work or something other than this stream, which is like part-time job, except the job would pay, and this doesn't, so it isn't the job. It's like being an intern, I guess. So the being retired days of the week are kind of irrelevant other than because of external things. Like if you want your trash picked up and they pick it up on Wednesday, you need to make sure it's there to be picked up Tuesday night so that they can get it Wednesday. So that day of the week becomes somewhat important only because of an externality. Otherwise, one day is just like any other. And then this stream is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so I need to keep track of it and not skip a Wednesday and start it on Thursday, for example. That would be, not oriented to time and place. Anyway, what I'm trying to do here is use up the first 15 minutes of the stream before I start doing anything. It's kind of traditional to spend 15 to 30 minutes not doing anything. But that didn't last that long. It didn't last as long as I was hoping. So I guess I'll talk about what I'm going to try to get done today. I'm continuing to work on this wonderful Apollo model. I've got the escape tower done, and I've shown that to you off and on a couple of times. If you go back on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. I'm working on the service module, and as the thing under me that says service module complete, ! I'm intending to complete it, but I put a question mark in there just as a contingency in case something went wrong. But this is like 95% complete. It is, I've used this analogy before. It's like if you're restoring an old car, and you don't get around to finishing it and you want to sell it, you always advertise it as 95% restored, whatever that means. It doesn't, who knows what's missing? Maybe everything's there except, I don't know, 2 of the 8 pistons or something. Or maybe it's as inconsequential but aesthetically important as like a piece of trim that you just couldn't find anywhere. And so you don't have it attached. to the outside of your car, or maybe there's a tear in the back seat and you need to have it reupholstered. But 95% complete can mean a whole lot of stuff, all the way from why didn't you finish it? All you have to do is buy new tires, to there's 4 pieces missing and they don't exist anymore, and you'd have to have them fabricated at an exorbitant price. Well, this is more of the all that's missing is a piece of trim, but I found the piece of trim and I'll just be attaching it. What needs to be done on the service module today is that these little bits here, I'll put it way up to the camera, these little bits, these are attitude control jets, and there's 4 of them, and they attach to the outside of the service module. So that's all that needs to be done to complete that. So I should be able to do that unless something goes horribly wrong today. If you were to look at the instructions themselves, it's like, these little arrows tell you to attach them to places. Of course, the instructions as usual are not all that incredibly helpful, in that they only show 3 of them. Yeah, pretty nice, huh? And although they do say 4x 4 times there, even though they don't show that on the picture. So the 3 things that I'm going to try to get done today, I'm try to do them in an order in which I can get more done. They have these little astronaut figures. I pulled these out on Wednesday. There's one that goes inside the lunar excursion module, one that stands on the moon. It's got its moon backpack life support system, and 3 that go inside the command module. And they come in 2 halves like that, a front and a back. Okay, I might to do that first, because if the cement sets well enough, then later on in the stream, if there's time, I can file down and sand off the seams, and there will be seams showing because these are not terribly well molded. The other thing that I'll do, besides completing the service module, and what I need to do, I don't know what scale this is. Okay, I'm not sure what this. There's nothing on the instruction that says what scale it is. Usually it says it's like 1/32 or 1/48 or 1/60 or something like that. This gives no clue. I suppose I could estimate it, but what I'm getting at in a roundabout way is astronaut ice cream, yes, but it has to be scaled appropriately. So if these turn out to be like 1 to 50 scale, I'll just make up a number because I don't know what it really is, then we would need 1 to 50 scale like that, a little bitty astronaut ice cream. I'll show you one. The astronauts are safely stored in this little container. It's not airtight. You don't have to worry about that. These are the sitting ones. That's not helpful. I want a standing one. Here's a standing one. So here's a standing guy. It's that high, right? So the astronaut ice cream would need to be about the size of its hand. Maybe I could fabricate some. I probably could. I could, like, out of a little piece of one of the flipping sticks or a toothpick or a little chunk of balsa or something. And I could paint it. What is it? Brown. I think we could. Yeah. And we could print the whole package, and I could try to paint the detail of the astronaut on the astronaut ice cream package. Or we could just have like a little rectangle of what would be like pink, brown, and off-white to represent the different flavors of ice cream. Anyway, you can see, like, here's one of the sitting astronauts. And if you cement it together like this, you can see that there are some pretty serious seams along the side, and then the feet don't even seem to come together at all. There's something in the way. I don't know what. So there'd have to be some little trimming away. But if I could get these like cemented together and to fit sort of well, then I could fill in the seams and sand them down so that they'd be ready to paint. These are going to take forever to make them look right, because they just don't fit well. Could make it look like there's a stripe down the side of the spacesuit or something. But yeah, so I'll have to play with these a little bit. I was thinking of doing those first, so that I could maybe later, sand down the seams. But I think if I cement them together, they're just going to have to sit over the weekend. So I'm changing plans right here in midstream. There's a spontaneous change of plans. Oh, good grief. It's only 11 after. I'll probably have to get things done today. So a change of plans. I'm not going to cement those together first, because thinking about it, I'm not going to be able to, the cement isn't going to set well enough to work on the seams yet today. So, and I don't want to finish the service module right away, because if anybody is going to join in and watch the stream, which may or may not happen, other than thank you for coming. Paint. I wonder what I could possibly paint. I don't know. I mean, I could look around and maybe find something. I'm not sure. I could paint a doodle on a piece of paper or something just to do it. Okay. So those are going to be later. I'll get around to those later a little bit. But I don't want to do the service module right away until maybe like 11:15 or something, the time zone that I'm in. So the other thing I've got, I primed. I spent most of Wednesday. That was the last time I did this, because this is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This being Friday, the one before this must have been Wednesday. I was working on the housing unit, which is a fairly large parts for the lunar excursion module, and it's also the thing on top of which the service module sits. So you can see it here. This is it opened up, and the lunar module goes down into it, and the service module sits on top of it. And then this is sort of, well, it's all nestled together nicely. Yeah, inside of this. So I got these primed, but what I need to do is mask them, because the insides of these flaps and the inside of this circle is painted a different color than the outside. The inside is like a gray-green color that you've seen before in the service module, and the outside is like a pearlescent white. And I'm going to paint the gray-green inside first, and I need to mask the outside. There it is. I think I'll probably just start on that until a little bit later in the stream, at which point I'll stop doing that, and we'll reach over. I'll walk up, get off camera, walk over and get the parts that are of the service module that are in the box. I'm pointing to it over there, and attach these little attitude control jets. Oh, this I did a paint test. The inside of the command module has to be painted light blue, and I think the inside of the lunar excursion module also is painted light blue. There's the G color is G. G is light blue, and I tested like three different kinds of paint, and they were just awful. And so I found one, and this is right. This will be just right. This one. This is also a really nice color, ghost gray, but it's supposed to be more blue than this. This is, there's a lot of blue in that. But I think that's some. This is my highly sophisticated way of finding out if paint colors work. Is some boxes come with white. You know, they're not just brown cardboard; they come with white, and I've been using those to test paint. Yeah, so there. The quarter after now, it might be time to start something. Although you might ask, okay, once you're done with this and you've attached these little things to the outside of the service module, what will you do next? Oh, there are two modules left. One is the lunar excursion module, okay? And as you can see, there's more attitude control jets and little bitty parts all over the place, okay? Little bitty antennas and in this case, it's the docking ring, okay? Stuff is supposed to be painted gold. Gold foil wraps around the outside. This is the descent stage. That's the ascent stage. They're separate from each other. The little spider-like legs actually fold up so that they fit inside the unit that I'm working on, the containment vessel, and then they open up. And you can see that the hinge mechanism is made out of little bits of plastic that may or may not hold together. We'll find out. The painting instructions are not very helpful. So, yeah, we'll just have to see. Just have to see when I start working on that, how it goes. Occasionally, it turns out that I have to assemble things in a different order than the instructions. Okay. Anyway, yeah, it actually came with gold foil. That's the really cool thing about this model is that the actual LEM, the Lunar Excursion Module descent stage, was wrapped in gold foil, like gold plated mylar kind of. And so before I even opened the box, I said, oh, I think I might go out and get some so it looks realistic, but the model came with it. So that was cool. Well, I'm going to set this aside here. Side being, I don't know, somewhere other than here. And in this box, this isn't an ad for the thing that's on the box. It's just that it was a really convenient box because, look, it held the pieces. And yeah, these pieces are large. These are like the biggest pieces in the entire model. They're very large pieces. And what needs to happen to these is that they need to be masked all around the edges, because the edges are part of the outside, not the inside. So I need to mask all around the edges of these things so that I can paint the inside. After painting, sometimes flaws in the molding really show, like on the hinge here. I have to be careful not to break the hinge. Yeah, so I need to mask the edges because the edges have to be white, okay? And the inside has to be gray-green, so I'll be doing that, and it's kind of a pain to do that, but it will need to be done. And as I go, I will detect additional issues with the molding quality. I don't know. I think if you look at this, I think I did really well. There were, and you might see it on some of these circles, one there, and then on the other side too, there were 6 circles molded into this thing. And I sanded them out and then sanded down the entire surface so that the surface had the same texture. And on this one, at least, you can't tell really that there were 6 nasty little circles on it before. This one came out okay too. Huh. I'm just looking at this being surprised. Hi, welcome. Um, what I was doing was I was procrastinating by not getting anything done for a while. The schedule for today is masking these things so that I can paint the inside of them gray-green. And then on Monday, I'll unmask them and then remask them so that I can paint the outside, the pearlescent white that I'm using for the outside of it. These are primed now. I primed them yesterday. And I'm going to start the taping, the masking process now. And then in about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, I'm going to pull out the service module and finish it, and we'll have a big ta-da moment. The completion of the service module, which would be the second of the 5 major components of the Apollo stack. This is going to be the third of them, and when this is done, it doesn't look like much. There's not many parts, but they're big, and so the masking will take a while, and then the assembly is actually going to be a little challenging because basically the part has to sit like this, and the hinge has to go on here, right, with one of these over it. And so essentially, this has to be held in place so that it sets in the right spot. And then this bracket goes over the hinge, and then that has to set. And I don't really have a good way of holding it in place when it's on there. So it's just going to be a thing. Getting that to hold on there, because the way this works is that if that bracket's on, this lifts up about that high and then folds down like that. Okay, and that puts pressure on that bracket, in a way pushing it away from this that could actually just pop it off. So anyway, that's for the future. So masking most of these isn't going to be that hard. Masking this, on the other hand, is not going to be easy because it's circular. Okay. And I have to mask all around the edge. I'm going to actually start with this one because, and I want to work here, and this box is here. So this box needs to go somewhere else. One of the other members of Dyson Dungeons was very helpfully telling me that, oh no, it was my brother. Sorry. Confused about the source of this conversation. But now I remember. It was my brother who was saying, oh, why don't you get one of those modeling tables like you can see on people who do modeling shows where they really know what they're doing and they're professionals. And, and they've got a nice studio, and they've got these big tables with bright lights and racks that are set up for their paints. And they always put things away and the tools you can find right away. Why don't you get one of those? And I said, well, that's because this is a no-budget show. It's not even a low-budget show. It's basically a no-budget show. And so what I've got is the workbench, and that's what this is. This thing here underneath the cardboard is a big workbench. There's saber saws and circular saws and drills and glue and clamps and all sorts of things that are used for actual working. And I have been allocated a third of it on the top here, most of which is cluttered with stuff. So it really kind of comes down to, what did I say, like 3 square feet that is here. And I'm using this cardboard because the gray surface underneath was actually really kind of hard to work on. And as you can see, it's been worked on. There's been a lot of stuff going on here. It's all spattered and stuff. So I decided, well, I'm going to get real sophisticated and put a piece of cardboard down so I don't make a mess of everything. except for the cardboard. And because we sometimes, get things delivered, there are boxes that come to the house. So I have a replacement piece of cardboard, and this is getting really close to needing to be replaced because all 4 pieces of it. Here, let me show it to you. See, this is the clean part. That's been pretty well used. On this side, look at that. That one just got so used up, and this had a big blot on it. So maybe next week I'll have a major event of getting a new piece of cardboard. It'd be pretty exciting. Well, because this is circular, and I found with this service module that masking circular things, curved surfaces like this was difficult. I went online and found this, what is supposed to be special tape. Okay. What's supposed to be special about this is that it is supposed to be flexible. I don't know. I haven't used this before. This is not a I am a master modeler, I will show you how to do things show. This is we'll all learn together kind of thing. So it's supposed to be flexible so that it will follow a curve. Let's find out. What I want to do is get the tape to take my glasses off. I've explained that before, trifocals. What I want to do is get the tape so that it is like a tiniest little bit over the edge. So that on the other side, well, this working kind of, it's working okay. It's kind of cool. Let me show that to you in just a second. Hopefully it will seal down tightly. What I want to have happen is I want it to go just very slightly over the edge so I know that it's protecting it, but I don't want it to fold down onto the edge because it needs to be painted that gray-green color right on up to the edge. Okay. Well, I'm sure that there are people out there who have done modeling before who are going, of course, this is what you should use, duh. But, I'm not that person. I'm the let's see what happens kind of thing. So just going to go all around the edge here. The outside of this needs to be masked as well. So I'm going to be just wrapping a piece of paper around it, as I've done before. It's just, this is I guess this was worth the money. Because this is a no budget show, that is, unless you go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons and become a patron, and then you could initiate being a budget for this. That's a shameless promotion of our Patreon. And if you do become a patron, you get access to our DMs, our Dungeon Masters notes, Dungeon Mistress, actually, for a bunch of the previous sessions. So you get behind the scenes, understanding of how the sessions were planned, and even more interesting, how the plan didn't work because the party members did not behave the way the DM thought they would. That's one of the things that Midnight Brunch is our DM party's name. We are known for our spontaneity. Actually, it's not so much spontaneous as it is doing things that the DM should have known better about. Should have known, of course, that's how they would behave in this situation. Not the way I designed this scenario. We messed up a really important part of the narrative not too long ago. In that we met a kind of a foe. I mean, not really strong antagonist, not like a super boss or something, but a character that was important to my character's story. I play a furball fighter, and the DM had prepared an epic battle for us, and we just ran away. I have to say, we bravely ran away. You know, just very important. You know, a well-known trope. We bravely ran away. Actually, we didn't. We just ran away and started a fire. I don't know. It's just our party. Just there always seems to be like an explosion or a fire or something. It's just something that happens around us. I guess this is going okay. Doesn't seem to be folding over. It doesn't go very far down on the other side, and so it'll be a little messy putting the paper on the outside, but like the paper might extend beyond the edge or something, but that's okay, as long as it doesn't get down on the inside. Spray painting this is going to be a little bit of a challenge because, you know, it's the inside of a circle. So I'm going to actually end up having to hold it and spray it, and then flip it over and hold it and spray it. And I have to do that fairly carefully. There was one of the larger pieces, curved pieces, on the service module, ended up having to be done twice because I didn't get the paint on the entire curved surface, even though I thought I was aiming the spray well. It turned out that I really didn't. And this one is even more difficult than that in terms of just getting the paint on the entire surface. So probably end up, I'm a little bit concerned that I'll run out of that color just short of getting this done. I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens on relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons is, oh yeah, right on this, and all I need to do is spray this, and I can move on to attaching these things and the hinges and getting this whole part done, and then I run out of paint. And that would actually not be a good thing, because the last time I was looking at paint, when I found that blue color that will be just the right color for the inside of the command module and the lunar excursion module, when I found that color, I also looked to see whether I could get another amount of, I'm using spray paint because I'm not good with airbrushes. If I could get another can of that, you know, and there's like 80 different colors, right? And 3 of them are out of stock. And of course, that was one of them that was out of stock. So, yeah, if I don't have enough paint to paint all of the inside surfaces of these very large components of this fairing, it would not be good. It would not be good, because then the construction of this would be delayed while I try to find it from another source and have it delivered. But I wouldn't be terribly surprised if as I'm painting this, it suddenly just goes, you know, as it does. And not only does it not, do you not have any paint then, but the last bits of it come out in globs. And so I'd have to like wipe down the entire surface just frantically with a paper towel, getting the wet paint off the surface so that I didn't have just globs and blobs of it all over the place. I'm anticipating a problem because those happen. Time is it here? Okay. I'm going to mask the bottom of this now too, using this as it turns out to be. They didn't lie. As it turns out, they didn't lie, and it really does do what they say it does, which goes around the curved surface pretty nicely. I'm going to finish, tape the bottom of this, and then decide whether to paper, mask the outside of that with cheaper and larger masking tape, or move on to the completion. Ta-da! Should have. It's too bad we can't play music. It would be a really good time for some triumphant music, but playing music is a problem because of all sorts of bizarre copyright claims and junk like that. And why is this timer is like flaking off? Anyway, yeah, it would be a really good time for some triumphant music when I finish the service module, but I'm not going to have that. So I'll probably just go ta-da. I'm practicing my ta-da on this. The last bit on the service module should be, but then again, should and actual and reality are sometimes not the same thing. It should be pretty easy. I'm going to be using contact cement because I'm attaching painted surfaces to painted surfaces. And the stuff grabs pretty well. I've had a lot of success with it. The contact points are really quite large. Okay, so that they're not challenging. They're fairly easy to reach. They're all on the outside of the service module. So there should be no excuses for problems, but I'm not sure. I can anticipate issues. I'm really good at imagining things going wrong because I've had a lot of experience with things going wrong, like in like modeling this kind of thing. And one of the things I will imagine is that those attitude controlled jet nozzles that are attached to the outside of the bracket that holds them onto the service module would fall off or break off, in which case they would need to be replaced. And putting them on was somewhat difficult. They're really tiny. The points of contact, the contact points, where the adhesion is supposed to happen, is minuscule. Just itsy bitsy. Why am I saying that? That's just dumb. It's tiny. It's very small. And if they fall off, then it'll just delay everything. I'd probably end up just attaching the bracket anyway, because like 3 out of the 4 would still be attached. But then I would probably, anyway, you'll see it if it happens. I'm hoping it doesn't. But if it does, it will be time consuming. So, and they're really small in an awkward location, and fingers and tweezers and things just they don't always work the way you'd like them when things are tiny. But think it's right at the edge, but I can't tell. Spray, well, if there's a little bit of overrun of the gray-green, this edge is going to be painted white, which is why I'm masking it. If there's a little bit of overrun, the gray-green onto the white, I can actually just scrape it off pretty easily before I paint the white on the outside. I hope I have enough of the white paint too. Been using a fair amount of that. But it's the gray-green that I'm particularly concerned about because I ended up using a lot more of it on the service module than I had thought I would. Mainly because I had to paint the largest piece of the service module twice. And as it turns out, I probably didn't need to paint it at all because you can't see it once it's assembled. Lovely. So, yeah, so it's this combination of using more paint than I expected by like double, painting a surface that probably didn't need to be painted because it can't be seen, using twice as much paint as I expected, and then not being able to get more of that color. But you've heard that. I mean, you probably heard that when like accidents happen, it's a sequence of events, and all of the events in the sequence have to happen, or else the disaster wouldn't happen. Well, although it may not be a level of disaster, it certainly would be a level of really that sequence of events of wasting a lot of paint by not getting it right the first time, overspraying a second time, wasting it in the sense of it didn't need to be done at all, and then not being able to get more of it. All leading to not being able to finish this section of the Apollo model. Not a total disaster. I would just go on and start working on the lunar excursion module instead. Which was going to happen eventually anyway, because whether I like it or not, this will either be delayed while I'm waiting to find the right color paint again, or it'll be completed. And in either case, I would have to move on to the LEM. There's no avoiding it. And then the final component will be the command module, which isn't all that challenging. I mean, there's a lot of parts to it, but it's not that challenging. But I have delayed working on that because I've shown you the interior of it before. The interior, you can see the interior through the hatch, which opens. A lot of there's hinges and things on lots of parts of this. So things open so you can see the insides, like the inside of the service module, which you'll be seeing soon. At least the intent is that the control panels really should be detailed with showing all the display screens and switches and all this other stuff. But the way it's molded, it looks like it's going to be next to impossible to paint it. So I will probably attempt the next to impossible because I don't want it to just look dumb. Okay, well, I've got tape all around the edges and this new expensive special tape that bends worked really quite well. As long as it adheres, pretty well, at least pretty well, it should be okay. What I need to do with the rest of this now is wrap this in paper. And I've got paper here. So what I would do is I would just cut some out and wrap it around It's kind of an awkward, yeah, cut a piece out. See if I cut it wide enough. I bet I didn't. Yeah, just. Okay. So this needs to be kind of wrapped around this like this. And I think what I'm going to do is usually what I would do is I would tape it to the sides, but I can't do it with this. So I'm going to get this tape out. Usually I'd use like the less expensive painter's tape that one uses when one is painting walls, masking off the woodwork and the floors and stuff. But this tape I'm using because it doesn't pull the paint off, or at least it hasn't so far. The way I'm going to do this is in sections. I'm going to go about this far. Why am I doing it this way? I don't know. I mean, because I think it'll work, not because I know what I'm doing. But the end result should be that the outside is covered in paper. Okay, I'm going to just do it like this. I'm going to stick this on here. And then, and this is, of course, not, wow. Okay, the problem is that this flares. That is, the bottom is bigger than the top, and so one cannot just wrap it around because it isn't straight. Okay, so this plan isn't working. Not as intended, anyway. I'm just going to cobble something together here. I mean, what else can I do? Is cobble it, which is appropriate. It was. I don't know why it was like that, but cobbled together, and the way my grandparents used to talk about it was if something was poorly constructed, okay, they would talk about it being done by a shoemaker, which is also, cobbling together. Being a kid, you never, it is what it is. Grandparents say those things. But my experience with shoemakers, which was kind of limited, there was one near us. This was at a time, believe it or not, there used to be a time when shoes were repaired, right? One would get new soles put on shoes because if the top didn't wear out, but the sole or the heel did, it was common to go to the shoemaker and have a new sole or a new heel attached, and then the shoes would go on. The materials for soles and heels back then was not as robust as it is now, so they would, they'd wear out. Worked a little better, and except that tape on this. Anyway, yeah, we would go to the place and we would get new soles or heels put on our shoes so that they lasted longer. I don't think any people can't imagine, I bet, doing that now. It's like, what? Why didn't you just get new shoes? Well, we didn't. We didn't get new shoes. The shoes were perfectly fine. Other than that, they wore out. See, the issue I'm having here is that even though the paper sort of comes up to the edge, it isn't sealed to the, there might just be overflow of the paint because it's not like sealed up against the edge. This isn't ideal, but so far I think this will be okay because the tape comes down around a little bit. Okay, well, it's not going badly so far, and I'm going a little bit longer than I wanted to before I get to the point where I actually complete the service module. I was going to plan to do that about 10 minutes ago, but then I got started on this, and it was like, well, why not finish something before going on to the next thing? Why not? Well, why not is that if you were with bated breath, whatever that means, I think that means you stopped breathing. It's kind of dumb. But if you were, waiting with bated breath for the epic conclusion of the service module, you will now have been disappointed because I haven't gotten to it quite yet. Because I'm doing this. No, I'm sorry. I'm just going to finish doing what I'm doing here, and then I will get to the epic conclusion. I promise. Right after this, another 5-8 minutes or something. Then we'll move on to the finishing of the service module. Okay, I screwed that up. I made it too narrow. And then this has holes in it. Put it in this direction. It'll be too wide, but too wide is better than too narrow at this point. What you're seeing here is the ongoing example of this is not a how-to show. This is let's do what we, let's make stuff up as we go. And if you're ever going to do serious modeling, this is not for you. Okay, this is serious. I'm taking this seriously, but it is more than anything is just doing what you can to get it done. Trying to cover one's errors by adapting a different strategy. But this is going to be masked, and once masked, which it is going to be because that's what I'm doing, once masked, I will be able to paint the inside of this, assuming I have enough paint, with the gray-green paint. I've got like this one little chunk left here. And ta-da, it is clumsily but completely masked. Yeah. I mean, that last part, I just got I got impatient. And didn't get it pushed down. All right. So there's masking, white masking all around the top and bottom edges. I will, before I spray it, check to make sure that it hasn't folded down onto the surface underneath. I think it has a little bit there. And then we'll put spray paint all over it. And then on Monday, I'll be unmasking this and then masking it again so that I can paint the outside. In the meantime, I can set this aside. I should set this aside in the box, the box of parts. Clean up the workbench a little bit, just a bit. Put this back in its protective envelope. And then I am cleaning up more or less. Get my mug of coffee. My official, you didn't need to see that here. Dyson Dungeons logo, Dyson Dungeons mug. And I'm going to go get the service module. Be right back. So in this box, which was taped shut to keep the dust out and the tape didn't hold, yay, are the components of the service module, and I get to show them to you because this is what I am going to be finishing. Thank you for the new follow. You have come on just in time to see the epic conclusion of the assembly of the service module. So here's the service module. Okay. It doesn't look like much here, but this door opens to reveal interior detail of the service module. Pretty cool. And it closes again and the hinges pop off. Unfortunately, the parts don't fit perfectly, but they fit adequately. There's the top and the bottom. On the bottom, this component, which is the nozzle of the service module engine, is not cemented on, so that you can take it off and reveal the piping detail. Okay, this bit here, this ridge here, fits into that hole with friction. If it's lined up correctly, it goes on like that. Okay, and I'm not going to put it on right now because the last bits that I need to put on are the attitude control rocket nozzles, jets, these little bits, these tiny little bits of things need to be attached to these spots on the outside. I'm going to use contact cement to do that. And then after those are attached and don't fall off or break, I will then put that on just as a demonstration. to show how it's supposed to look. These are not symmetric. Okay. The one off. Okay. They're very delicate. The the ones that go vertically like that are symmetric with each other, but this one is higher than that one. Okay, they're not at exactly the same level. At least that's the way it looks. And so I want them to be all the same, oriented the same way. So as I put them on, that will go on the top. Okay, and they should all be pretty symmetric. They're just, yeah, I know. They're just not perfectly done. I had a really hard time attaching these things, and it feels like one of them wants to break off already. So the way the contact cement works is when it's really gooey, it's a little bit messy to work with, but you put it on and then it just sets there, and it can set there for a fairly good long time. Put it on both surfaces, okay? And what's nice is that it waits for you. So if you put it on both surfaces, those surfaces can sit for like even a half hour or more. And they'll still stick when they come in contact with each other, which is why it's called contact cement. So I'm going to put the gooey contact cement into the insides of these things now, and that it can wait there. It can just sit there and wait. Well, I put it on the outsides of those. I'm using the contact cement for a couple of reasons. One is that it gives one time. It works even on painted surfaces without dissolving the paint, which the model cement does. It fills the gap, and the bottoms of these have a little, there's an indentation here that you can see, right? It is not a tight fit with the little thing on the bottom, the little thing on the bottom of those. And so the contact cement fills the gap. And it also stays flexible for a while, which means that it holds, it grabs so that the part doesn't fall off. And like with the model cement, sometimes it just doesn't hold enough, and you need to hold it in place for a long time. See this little alignment. Basically, it's an alignment pin, kind of, more than anything. There's no good place to hold this. It just isn't. It's adhering to the toothpick, but not to the plastic. Yeah, breaking that off too. Okay. So yeah, this is going to be, the problem is that these things are just really small and delicate. Yeah. Just, they're small enough. It's hard to grab them in a place where it avoids breaking the pieces off. This stuff sets up really fast. Use the fresh stuff. I lost my orientation. Maybe it doesn't matter that much. I have almost but not quite broken these two already. It's today. It's just, some days everything is just trouble. There, that'll be good. If I have a little too much on here, fortunately, there's a fair amount of coverage. I guess I'll call it that. Okay. Yeah, this is just like everything is not behaving. This is a misbehaving contact cement day. The other thing is that I found this possible, like if this gets on a spot where you don't want it, it's almost like rubber cement. If you get to it quickly enough, you can get it off very carefully. You can get it off without marring the surface underneath. So the problem is that it's very, very gelatinous and sets up very fast. So it's hard to apply. It was, as you can imagine, if you look at the dark colored things that are attached to the fronts and around the edges, those are held on with this, and you can just imagine that. Getting tiny little dots of this on both surfaces and getting it to hold, that was a challenge. There were 16 of them that needed to be attached. So, wow, yeah, it took a while. And they're not lined up perfectly because of, it was just hard to do. This little tube here is it was a sample that came with something else that we bought. And I tried it on some minifigs that I was doing for the D&D show. When it first comes out of the tube, it's pretty decent, but you got like 10 seconds to get it right. Anyway, what I have been known to, well, sometimes they just don't mold right. Sometimes they break off, but sword blades that broke off of the minifig and needed to be replaced. So I fabricated a sword blade out of a toothpick, and it matched the profile and it looked pretty good, but attaching it wood to plastic was difficult. There was not too many choices. So the first couple of times I used epoxy, it's 5-minute epoxy, but it doesn't hold that well until it's almost completely set up. Okay, I need to seriously do some cleaning at the top of this. And so, I mean, it worked, but it was just a real pain because it's a whole. Pretty much what I ended up doing is waiting like for 4 minutes until the epoxy was nearly completely set up, and then applied it to the two sides and then held it for another 2 minutes until it held. But then I tried this. I said, well, what have I got to lose, right? The epoxy's a pain. And it was kind of stunning, really, in that I just put the two parts together. Tiny little contact point, I mean, really small. And it held. So let's put one of these on. Yeah, that's how it goes on. And the contact cement holds and allows a little bit of adjusting. Tight fit. Okay. But there, that one's on. Yay, one. That these parts don't fit extremely well. But it doesn't fall off. That's the important part, is it grips it well enough so that as it's being adjusted, as the attitude adjustment jets sit there, they don't fall off, even if it doesn't fit all that well. And that gives me time to adjust the adjusters. See, I can touch it to it, and then it holds on, and I can push down on it from the top. Yeah. Once they are on, some additional adjusting of the adjustments. So if these don't look really good, it's really a fault of the way the model is constructed. Whoa, okay. The other thing is, like, I just did it twice. Really well done, right? As I'm rotating this, I smashed my finger into it and displaced it. This is why I didn't put these on before I installed the, I'm really not happy with the way these look. And the problem is that they are protruding too far from the surface and there's a gap. Okay. What you can see is that these brackets, what I'd like this to do is set in there further. And so, no, there's progress, but now there's going to be unprogress. What I should do, well, there's two things I can do. I can either just live with it as it is, or what I can do is I can take all of these off. Oh my. And what I should do then is sand down, that little flange thing here. Let me take this one. I'm really not happy with how this is turning out. I mean, really not happy at all with how this is turning out. And I'm not sure what it will take to fix it, but I'm going to take one of these off, which is, and just show you the problem. Problem is that this thing here is like too long, and it doesn't fit into this opening far enough to like seal it so that the edges. Do I need to start over? I don't know. Maybe. No good way to grab these things. Just no good way at all. This goes on like this. Okay. But it doesn't. In there, is it that the cement is getting in the way? Is my use of the contact cement actually causing a problem? It might be. It might be not working. Filling the gap, but it's filling it so well that it's keeping the parts from fitting. That sometimes that happens when things are going kind of okay, and until they don't. I might have to use a different adhesive. But I'm taking these off because I do not like how it worked. Let's just say it didn't work. It just didn't work. Well, I thought I had this nailed, but it is not. It is not working. This is a very disappointing turn of events. And now if I could get impatient here, and that would be a bad thing because I don't want to break these little rocket nozzles off. I'm already bending them out of position in a couple of places. Okay, I was ready for a major ta-da moment. I really was. I was prepared for a huge celebration, but as it turned out, it's not turning out. Oh dear. Okay. Well, let me clean these up as well as I can without harming them. Let's see what I can do about getting them to fit better. Yeah, I'm going to have to just use a different kind of adhesive. And let me just hope that it works. Okay. Let's just hope that it will work. So, well, yep, that wasn't the triumph that I was hoping for. That was a okay. Let's try something different. Let's, oh God, almost. What I was afraid of is that that because these didn't fit perfectly, there was a gap, and that the contact cement would fill the gap. But what it did was it actually kept the part from going in as far as it needed to go. So if I were to grab one of these again with the tweezers, put it up to the slot, yeah, it's fairly flush. It's not a bad fit, but it's okay. All right, so I'm going to clean these out. What can I say? It didn't work. What should have been like 5 minutes leading to triumph turned into half an hour of sadness, and this, and just sadness. The reason it just ended up confirming that it was a bad choice. So, we'll try something else. And we'll try this, and I'm going to try really hard to maybe, yeah, be very, very careful. So this stuff messes up the paint, but I'm going to put a little bit in here. I'm just going to do one, and a little bit on here. This is also sort of a contact cement, but it's much thinner. I think somewhere on there. Let's set for just a bit. My aim is going to have to be good here, because if I misplace it, okay, if I misplace it, it is going to the cement is just going to run everywhere and make a huge mess. So yeah, I'm going to let this set for a bit, and it is supposed to work like a contact cement. We'll see. Okay. Doesn't grab like immediately like the other. Oh, good grief! It doesn't grab immediately like the other stuff, but I can feel that it is adhering. Yeah, and it fits in there much better than the other one. Yeah, this is now the right choice if I can get all four of them to actually work. Make sure it's this is looking much better. Okay. Just need to do this 3 more times. that pin applicator. It's really, sometimes it's just really hard to see if there's cement on it or not. It's also very easy just to get way too much of it. But this is working much better. There's not the gap that was there before is not there now. Don't have as much time to do adjustments, but I can still do a little bit. I almost dropped it. That would have been not good. Dropping it would have been not good. Okay, 2. Well, I'm dabbing it on a piece of paper off to the side to just make sure it's flowing. Keep touching these. Oriented, okay. This looks a tiny bit crooked, but yeah, it's better. I keep bumping. They're located in the. If I hold this, I need to grab it where these are spots. Nice, huh? So I am like constantly bumping into. But this is much better. The gap that I was seeing that really bothered me a lot isn't there now. This and try not to edit myself here. This one is not adhering yet. So it looks like there's looks like it might be okay. And I need to let some of these little, like I said, the contact cement is sort of flexible. So some of these little rockets nozzles are like moved out of position, and I need to adjust them. Do that after this cement sets, because every time I touch one, it moves everything. It's going quiet here as I'm trying to get these just set just right, because once the cement sets, it's not going to move. I won't be able to take them off like I did with the rubbers, with the contact cement. So it's just this one nozzle is really badly aligned, and I'm getting impatient and attempting to move it before this is firmly attached. All right. Almost, but not quite completely done. I have, as you can see, this is kind of like offline, but I need to let this set for another couple of minutes before I can get it so that it's not unaligned. Did that without screwing up the paint. That's good. It's just getting so impatient, but I can't let it go. I don't know. This is weird. The first two just grabbed and held, and then these aren't setting as quickly. It's weird. Yeah, this one's sort of okay now. But that one, I might end up just pulling that off and starting over if I can't get it to. Oh, geez, I bumped into it and knocked it off. Okay, this one's just not. Oh man, is it not going to hold? No, it's not holding. Okay, well, there's always something. And in this case, that something is that this one isn't holding, so I need to put more on. I don't know what happened, but the cement, like there wasn't enough of it. I don't know. It didn't hold. The first two held really well. This one didn't hold at all. Well, getting so close, you get so close to getting this thing done, and then you're not. Time is it? Yeah, my great triumphant ta-da moment is turning into this is turning into a real difficult thing to do. But I will get it done before the break, though. I mean, two of the four are working fine. I'm just going to hold this here, put some pressure on it for a couple of seconds. Okay, so while I'm doing this, while I'm holding this in place, hoping that it will grab this time, because like the first two just grabbed and held really well. And then this one just simply didn't. This one, I'm not sure what's going on with this one, whether it's holding or not. Yeah, it is kind of. It's grabbing and setting. It's just this rocket nozzle is just there. That's not bad. That's okay now. It needs to rotate just the slightest bit counterclockwise. There. For some reason, I'm not sure why, this one is just not adhering. Part of it was that it wasn't set right. It wasn't in the slot, which is, so it might be just as well that it came so that it could be repositioned correctly. Yeah, that's much, okay, that's better now. It's a matter of just rotating it until I could see what was going on. And now I could see what was going on was that it wasn't set in the slot. Now it's holding really well. Yeah, I mean, it's holding really well. It just grabbed very tight. Good. That one's good. This one, doing okay. All right. I'm going to quit messing with this. This one, finally, wow. I don't know what was going on, but when I finally got it right, it set, and it looks pretty good. Yeah, maybe one of the best of the. So using this different adhesive rather than my brilliant plan has turned out to work okay. They're grabbing on. So let me, without getting too far ahead of myself, I'm going to put this on. I'm not going to keep it on because if it's on here, I can't store it. Okay, I can't easily store it in the box. But this is now, this is the service module. This is the ta-da. Okay, this thing comes out later. It swings out. That's the high gain antenna. Okay. The rocket nozzle goes on the back, and as I said, this comes off to reveal the detail of the plumbing underneath all of this. Inside of the rocket nozzle is black. And then this door, this part of the exterior opens carefully to reveal some of the detail on the inside of the service module. It closes carefully again. Very much out of alignment. Oh, okay, that's what's happening. Is actually this thing is not staying attached. Yep. So I'm just going to let it be held on by friction. And we'll just try not to keep breaking it. But there it is. There's the service module. Ta-da! Yay! Ta-da! I will ta-da that and say it looks okay. It has turned out to be not perfect, but it's definitely a B quality work. Nice detail there. And if I could pull this off without breaking off the rocket nozzle, which we'll see how that works. I want this off for storage. Very carefully breaking that off. There we go. Because it gets to be stored in this box to keep the dust out of it while I begin working on the rest of it. And at some point, I might get brave and reattach this half that is being held on by friction, but not really cemented on. So, sigh of relief. I should be, celebrating hugely, but I'm just going to breathe a sigh of relief and say, this turned out okay. It turned out okay. And set the components in this box. And we will see them again, I expect. They will be seen again when the whole thing is assembled. But for now, I'd like to close it up. And I'm going to get some good tape, not that blue tape that didn't hold. Be right back. Let me get some packing tape. What I will do instead is, instead of using a little piece of this blue tape to keep it closed so that the dust doesn't get in it, is I'll use a big piece of it and do that. And maybe that will work. I don't know. So if you missed that, if you missed the final assembly of the service module, you'll have to catch it on YouTube, because I am probably not going to bring this out again until at some point way down the road when it sets on top of. Okay, I'm knocking stuff over. It's great. It sets on top of this thing that I'm working on next, and I will show that to you soon because I'm asking it in anticipation of painting. Okay, I'm just going to put this aside. Yeah, there it is, going aside. You might have missed the service module. I'll show you again the completed escape tower. That came out okay. So I would say so far I'm succeeding in getting a B quality model. If I were a master modeler, I wouldn't probably be satisfied with the work done so far. I would have done better, but for me, I think it came out really pretty well, especially since the parts don't fit all that well. Okay, I'm going to throw this away. I'll be right back. Trying to keep the work surface moderately, not hugely messy. Okay. So this part's done. You just saw that if you were watching. The service module is done, and you just saw that if you were watching. And now I'm doing this container into which the lunar excursion module sits. And I am masking it so that I can paint it. I'll show that to you here. This is the box of parts. Okay. You did a box of parts. And the way this works is that these four things here, there's brackets down there. You can see the brackets. Those hold these hinges on. These set on top of it like that in the hinges, and then they lift up cleverly and fold down. And the insides need to be painted gray-green, and the outside, that kind of pearlescent white that you just saw, guffed up already. Yeah, the pearlescent white that you just saw on the service module. Why is the primer so flaking? I'm going to have to wipe these down. I'm going to have to remember to wipe these down before I spray paint. Maybe I should just... Oh, yeah. Just really, really, I hadn't noticed this issue before with the primer. Before I tape each one now, before I mask them, I'm going to wipe them all down while I'm thinking about it because it's really dusty. I mean, look how it's getting on my hands. Very weird. Yeah, here I am. You get to watch me brush these down. Anyway, the service module got done. I only needed to take it apart. You know, those little attitude control things. I attached them. It didn't look good at all. I had to take them off and use a different adhesive, and that seemed to work. Find out sometime in the future. I'll open that box again and take a look at whether the whole thing's holding together or not. If the primer got oversprayed or something, I don't know. It's just weird. It's just so dusty. These are really big pieces because, well, the entire lunar excursion module has to fit in here. Okay. And then the service module sits on top of it, and the rocket nozzle would extend down about that far. Okay. And the LEM is underneath it. So yeah, this is a really large component of the rocket. It's pretty boring, but it will be a real pain to put together because these little brackets, they're not very big. This hinge is not very robust, and it needs to work. It needs to the hinges, all four of them need to work. The brackets need to not fall off. And I don't know if you saw it earlier, but I did some test fitting, and there isn't really any good way of holding the bracket in place while the cement is setting. I don't know what's going on here. Discoloration there, and the pearlescent white paint doesn't cover that well. So this grayish color could show. I'm going to very gently sand that off. Even though the primer, it might be sanding off the primer, but that discoloration is, you can see it there. You have no idea where that came from. Plastic is white underneath. So if I can get that off, it's a very small spot. So if there isn't primer, probably will be okay. But that darker color is going to show through, and that will be a problem. Yeah, you can't see what I'm doing. It's off camera. Guess I can set this here. So I'm just using really fine, like 1500 grit sandpaper here to get rid of that discoloration. It's just amazing how there's always something. I mean, and the always something is like, what? How could that happen? Like the contact cement, which was supposed to fill the gap, filled it too much and kept those parts, the brackets, from, it just left a gap between the bracket and the outside of the service module. So I had to use another adhesive, which was a little less forgiving, but it seems to work. When I put them in the box, at least they were still stuck on. That was important, that the parts didn't fall off. I don't know where this came from. It wasn't in contact with anything dark. Got most of it off. Of course, the last bits, the very last bits, are the ones that are most reluctant to be fixed. That happens with so much regularity. It's almost like fate is intending it to be that way. I'm sure that you've had that experience too. Say, for example, you want to repair some metal brackets. I'll just say metal brackets. Why not? And they're bolted together, right? And let me say there's 6 bolts, and the first one, you're not quite sure what needs to be done to get the bolt off, and it takes a little bit, but then you get it off and you say, oh, I've got this nailed now, and the next 4 of them come off pretty easily, and you're feeling pretty confident, and you get to the last bolt, and what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is the thing that happens, is that the head of the bolt snaps off. It doesn't just round off. No, it doesn't just round off. It just snaps off altogether. And so, yeah, you got 5 of the 6 off of this. The last one has to come off because you can't separate the parts from each other until that bolt is off. But now what you've got is a headless bolt, and you're left with hardly any. You have no good choices. Okay. Essentially, what you're going to end up having to do is drill out the bolt. Maybe you've got a bolt remover thing, and the bolt is big enough, like maybe it's a 1/4-inch bolt or something, where you can drill down into it with this device, and it will grab the bolt and reverse screw it so it unscrews. Maybe you can do that. But more likely, there's like some sort of rust or something in the inside that's holding the bolt in, and the head snapped off. And now you have to somehow precision drill this bolt out, because you don't want to damage the thing that you're working on, because you want to put it back together again after it's repaired. But yeah, it's always like that. And that's what happened with the final assembly of the service module, which I have now put away because I don't want to touch it again until it's time to do some additional assembly, like setting it on top of this thing to make sure it actually sets on top of this thing. All right, so this one got masked before I eventually completed the service module. I used the new masking tape that went around the curve actually pretty nicely. I taped paper to the outside of it in a way that's adequate. And now I need to mask these. And what I'll be doing is masking all the edge here, here, the, I'm going to find these little spots that I missed before I primed it. Poorly molded. Yeah, all around the edge here. I know that this edge here needs to be white because it's all part of the exterior. The inside here, I'm wondering, this side will be painted gray-green. I'm just wondering out loud. Whether this bit right here should be painted white or gray-green. I'm thinking, I think white, because when it comes off, it'll look like it's part of it. It's not really part of the exterior casing. Not coming up with the right words. Not really part of that, but it's also not part of the inside. The hinge, I'm going to paint the hinge gray-green, as well as the brackets, because they are inside. So the taping down here will be a little bit awkward. I'm going to tape it up to that point there, and then back around there. Yeah, so it's time for a break. I had anticipated being able to get a lot more done today, which makes today just like any other day on Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons. I should have been able to get more done than I did, but I didn't. I thought that I would probably actually get the little astronaut halves cemented together today. In fact, I thought I would do that first so that I could work on them later and that this would go more quickly, but it didn't, because the final assembly, ta-da, it is done, of the service module ended up taking way longer than I anticipated, because it didn't go well. My very clever plan to use the contact cement turned out to be a bad idea, and then I had to use the other adhesive, and then the other adhesive didn't hold one of them, and it turned out it didn't hold it because I had it in the wrong location. So it was a good thing that it didn't hold, because it allowed me to take it off and realign it. But now it's done, and it's in a box, and the box is sealed, and it's just going to stay there It's going to stay there, and I'm not going to be like pulling it out and celebrating it because I don't want to mess it up. On Wednesday, I said I was going to take a half-hour break, and then I was gone way longer because I got distracted with other things. Today, I'm going to do my best to get back down here in about 20, 25 minutes maybe, and then I'm going to finish masking these. And that will take probably all the time I've got left at the speed with which I am masking stuff. So, what I have accomplished then today in like, man, almost 2 hours. It took me almost 2 hours to just get this masked and to put those little attitude adjustment rockets onto the service module 2.5 times. Yeah. Just like the submarine, I used to joke, but it wasn't a joke, that it probably took me longer to get the model of the submarine done than it did to build the submarine. It's beginning to feel like it's taking me longer to get this put together than the entire Apollo project took. I know that's not true, but it's just so slow. But I'm going to take the break. I need to take a break, and I'll be back sooner or later to finish masking this so that I can spray paint gray-green paint onto the insides of these fairings of the housing for the lunar module, if I have enough paint. So thanks for bearing with me so far. Thanks for the new follow, and I will be back in about 25 minutes. I'm pushing the start break button now. Okay. Yeah, a little bit longer than I wanted to, but that's typical, isn't it? I need to mask these guys, so let's get to it. You might notice that this is yeah, well, it's been going just barely adequately here, hasn't it? So almost out of this size of not pulling the paint off tape, but I was able to get another roll, so yay. So what I'm doing here is like with the other bits, this is going to be painted up to the edge, as I want to get the tape just ever so slightly over the edge, so that the paint will go up too, but okay, I'm gonna have to do this separately. There's that little flange thing there. Anyway, there's always a complication. There's always something. Why is there always something? Oh yeah, just slightly over the edge so that it extends over, so I know it's covered, but it doesn't fold over. So there. And then I'll paper the back. No, I don't. Who do you see that message about beneficious? The new follower that had just been kind of shut off there. I'm not sure what to do about that. Is there some way of letting that person know that if they are legitimate, their account is compromised, and that as a result, Wizbot shut them off? Not really sure what, if anything, should or could be done about that, but There is now a thing there. There is an issue with that account. Oh yeah, let me try to keep this on screen. I'll put the box of parts up there and do the taping down here. There's this, if all the edges were just the same, it would be one thing, but they're not. They're discontinuous. There's a ridge there that just makes it, yeah. Well, there, I got it covered anyway. So this will probably take, like everything else, longer than it should, right? It's just to get this tape on these edges and then to paper the other side of it. Things would go much better if it adhered to the surface better than it adheres to my fingers or the scissors or the tweezers or whatever it is that I'm using to try to control the tape. Trying to not get too impatient. Just impatient enough, right? But not too impatient so that then I end up with the tape going over the edge like it almost does here. I'm having the typical post-break, it's colder down here than it was before kind of feeling, and sniffling. Maybe I just shouldn't take a break, or maybe I should take a really, really, really short break, and then this wouldn't be an issue. Yeah, so if I paint, I was talking about these flanges before. If I paint them white, taping it on this side will be a little bit need to do. No, okay. No, it'll be easier to do it that way. I'm going to use the special curve hugging tape on these curved parts. It worked pretty well before, so I'll do it again. The tricky part for me is remembering what's supposed to get taped where, right? Getting it oriented in a way so that it actually happens the way it's supposed to. Well, as I was, and I was reading the ad for this curve hugging, I'll call it that, tape. It talked about if you're a modeler, you spend a lot of time masking, and that's really important. And it wasn't so much on the submarine because the submarine was filled with just millions of minuscule little parts that all needed to be hand painted, and that was okay because it was like relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. This model has almost none of that kind of painting. I mean, there have been some bits, but hardly any of it. But it's been a whole lot of masking. So yeah, it's kind of like not relaxing painting, but it's kind of like really boring masking with Dice and Dungeons, I have to say. The result has been pretty decent. Okay, so far the masking has proved its worth. This got messed up. The thing that isn't supposed to happen, which is that it folds over onto the surface that needs to be painted, has happened en masse here on this side and this edge. Painting these curved surfaces with this, even just spray painting it, is just getting the angles right, anyway. Wow, even the masking isn't working. What is up with today? The triumphant completion of the service module turned out to be a struggle because I had to do everything at least twice, sometimes 3 times. Now I can't even get the masking tape on right. Whine, complain. But it's just being weird today. There's bits of plastic that shouldn't be there that I didn't get off before. That little bits of flashing from the molding process that I should have sanded off, but I didn't. Do it the primitive way and just scrape it off with my fingernail. Oh, I wonder if I'll be able to finish masking this even before this streaming ends. I don't know. You would think the way things are going, despite the triumphal completion of the service module, despite that this is like a Monday or something, the way things are being less than ideal. You would think, almost, that would be the case. Instead of complaining about stuff, I probably should just talk about something. I've been struggling with that too. I've been running out of things to talk about from the 50s and 60s. It's not like there wasn't a lot of stuff to that happened then, because there was. I got like this, the whole Apollo program, and the space race and the missile gap and the arms race and all of those other things that almost destroyed the planet back in the 50s and 60s, but we didn't. For some reason, I guess, we just all sort of chickened out or something and said, oh no, let's not deploy our nuclear weapons in such a way that we will blow up the world. Like that would have been a bad thing or something, right? So we didn't. That was a good thing. We did that good thing back in the 50s and 60s, as we didn't blow up the world. We'll see how well we do now. What I'm doing here is I want the hinge, just this hinge part, to be painted that greenish blue color, greenish gray color. Just sort of, trying to be careful masking it that way. And the way I did it here is I put some tape across the edge here so that I could use the blue tape to tape on paper. I don't want the blue tape to touch the painted surface because I don't trust it to not pull the paint off. Although, it hasn't so far. But then again, I haven't really tested that as such. Great. See, I did that here too. I just wrapped the tape right around the edge. Doing. It was like when I was putting the attitude control rockets, brackets on the service module. It's just wherever I touched the service module, wherever I touched it, I was touching one of those brackets and bumping it. It was almost like it was attracting my hands or something, just to be that way. This isn't holding. So before I paint this, before I spray paint all over it, I'll check for the adhesion along the edges and make sure it's not wrapped over the edge. I do that anyway, but I'll do that, when I'm spray painting. And now I got some sort of dust here, right? It was dust on the white part, and then I got onto the tape. Wednesday was like this too. This entire week has been, it gets done, but it's a struggle, or it has to be redone. Okay. Well, having learned a little bit, I'm going to do the curved parts. I'm going to put the paper all on at once, not one at a time. I'll put the paper on one at a time, but I will tape the edges of all four of these first, and then paper them sequentially, but after the edges are taped. So I guess what I was saying earlier is that when I, found this, I was buying some additional of that yellow tape that I'm using on the straight edges. When I was buying a new roll of that, because the roll that I've got is, I'm almost out of it. I'm almost done with it. It did say that when you're building models, a major part of it is masking. And in this particular model, that has been very much the case, where there has been a lot of masking. So far, I would say it actually has been in the A level that the result has been, for the most part, quite good. in terms of getting nice straight lines without much overspray and that sort of thing. So that's been that's been kind of nice. But unless you enjoy watching someone put tape on plastic, it doesn't make, I don't think, makes for a great stream. So I'll apologize for that. And what it makes for is me just complaining about how it's really not working that well instead of talking about something that might be slightly entertaining. Which I'm not doing because I'm sticking tape on the edges of this model. Anyway, did we ever come to a conclusion about whether, in fact, Tom Terrific was the greatest hero ever? I suppose, what do you? You have to come to a consensus first about whether an individual is a hero or not. Okay. So I don't know, like, was Sergeant Rock a hero? You don't even know who Sergeant Rock was. The 1950s and 60s comic book World War II guy, soldier. Sergeant Rock was, he did impossible things all the time. He took out a tank with his bayonet once. I think he struck a spark or something on the outside of it, or jammed it into something, like jammed it into a gear or a tread or something, up close, and did that. That's the kind of thing Sergeant Rock did. Fought in Europe, as I recall. I don't think he was a Pacific Theater American U.S. soldier. Definitely a U.S. soldier, though, because our opinion here was that we were the major part of the war, even though we weren't. It's just little jingoism, I guess. But that's the way it was. Anyway, Sergeant Rock a hero? And then could you compare him, if he was a hero, to Tom Terrific? Tom Terrific could be what he wanted to be. I don't know what he would do if confronted with a tank and how he would change his shape to deal with that. Tom Terrific was not involved in warfare. So even if we decided that Sergeant Rock was a hero, I'm not saying we decided that or not, but say even if we did, how would we compare him to Tom Terrific, who never engaged in the same sorts of activities? I don't know. That would be hard to do. And then should we limit ourselves to like animated or fictional heroes? I'm assuming we can agree on what a hero is. Should we limit ourselves then to in our Tom Terrific comparisons to like Batman or Superman or Batgirl? There were girls, right? Was it Supergirl or Superwoman? I can't remember. It was back then. It would have been Supergirl because we didn't apparently have women. We only had girls then. So yeah, so that's the question. That is a question. Before we can even begin before we can even really begin a serious consideration of whether Tom Terrific was the greatest hero ever, we need to decide basic things like what is a hero, but also even whether we would then compare Tom Terrific to like real people who may or may not have been, heroic, but who might be considered to have been heroic. Like what, Audie Murphy, trying to just stay in the time. Or one of the astronauts. Would an astronaut even be a hero? Especially the early ones who just sort of rode in a capsule. Just they had a chimpanzee who just rode in a capsule, did the same sort of thing. So what qualifies as a hero? That's the first question. Well, it is a question. I don't know if it was the first question. Among the questions one might ask in consideration of whether Tom Terrific really was the greatest hero ever, as he claimed. No one else made that claim. Tom Terrific himself was the claimant, the person, not even a person, the cartoon character. Tom Terrific was the cartoon character that claimed that Tom Terrific was the greatest hero ever. We already talked about Tom Terrific's apparent narcissism. And go into that again, because the question here isn't that was a separate discussion about whether Tom Terrific had narcissistic personality disorder. But the question here is just, dealing with the claim of being the greatest hero ever. It makes it easier to make that claim when it becomes so difficult to even begin to make a judgment about that. I mean, really. So what is a hero or not a hero? What is it? How? With whom are we comparing Tom Terrific? And is it fair to compare Tom Terrific to real heroes or just fictional heroes? I mean, those are serious questions that need to be answered before the claim of being the greatest hero ever can even begin to be evaluated in any kind of objective way. I guess I could offer an opinion. I don't know if that would be too controversial for this streamer not to offer an opinion about whether, not to reach a conclusion, but just to offer an opinion about some of the preliminaries, like what is a hero? But I'll offer this opinion. This is just an opinion, not a conclusion. That the comparison, at least, the comparison of Tom Terrific to other heroes should be just fictional heroes. Okay, that having a shapeshifter or a changeling, just in D&D terms, like Zoria on Sul, our changeling druid, having a changeling or being a changeling is a fictional ability. And so making a comparison with actual people is really not fair. Okay? Because what you're doing is you're comparing very powerful fictional ability, changelingness, to just being a human. Okay, and that I don't think that that's a really fair comparison. So, my opinion, at least, is that in deciding whether or not Tom Terrific is the greatest hero ever, that the comparisons need to be made only with fictional characters and not with real people. That and if that conclusion held, if that thought was actually the conclusion that's reached before making the determination of Tom Terrific's claim, it at least puts some limits on the figures, the characters. I guess we'll just call them characters that would be in consideration for greatest hero ever. Limiting the scope of choice is sometimes important, in being able to reach a conclusion. If there are way too many choices, it becomes impossible to decide. But then we'll just do this hypothetically, okay? Because I'm not reaching conclusions. I'm just making an observation or a suggestion that if it is that we're saying only fictional entities can be considered or the role of, or the claim to being the greatest hero ever, then we need to have some clear definition of what it means to be a hero so that we can limit put some limits on the competition to the claim that Tom Terrific has made. That's it. So, is Superman a hero? One might think that decision is pretty clear and straightforward, that yes, indeed, Superman is a hero because, leaping tall buildings with a single bound and that kind of thing allows Superman to save people, solve crimes, fly up the side of a building and pull somebody out of a burning situation, like a fire in the building, through a 15th, 14th floor window. Okay, those are, you might say that then in fact Superman is a hero. On the other hand, because there's always another hand, right? On the other hand, to be considered a hero is sometimes needs to commit an act of bravery that is just extraordinary, like way beyond what an ordinary person could do. And so you might say that Superman wasn't really a hero because Superman could just do these things that for an ordinary human would have definitely been heroic. I mean, saving someone from a 14th floor window while they were in a burning building would have been, I think, maybe probably unquestioningly a heroic thing to do for an individual. But was it really heroic for someone who could just like fly up, pick up an individual, that because they had super strength, right? It was nothing to just lift up this individual and carry them to safety. Whereas for a human, it would have been a feat of extraordinary extraordinary strength and daring. So, because of Superman's nature, that things that would be way beyond the capability of a normal person just was like nothing. Okay, yeah, just fly up to the 14th story, whatever, and grab this person through the window and carry them like they didn't weigh anything at all because of super strength and all of that. Was that really heroic? Or just like, well, whatever. Yeah, you can do that. Good for you. So I don't know. I think I'm just asking the question, as they say. People like to say that now. It just raises the question of whether or not Superman could even be in the contest. But then using that same questioning, that same wondering about it, what about Tom Terrific? I mean, Tom Terrific can just is a changeling, and so can just be anything. A bumblebee or a tree, right? You have to ask the same question: are the acts that Tom Terrific does heroic acts or not really? Because again, doing something as a bumblebee that an ordinary person could definitely not do, not being a bumblebee sized or bumblebee capable or anything like that. Is that heroic, or is it just, what one would expect of someone who was a changeling? Could Tom Terrific even be a hero, given the capabilities that he has compared to other cartoon characters, fictional characters? Maybe not. Maybe that claim of being the greatest hero ever is totally vacuous, because by using these extraordinary powers of being a changeling, basically gets disqualified from being a hero. Just being a changeling, just doing changeling stuff. Maybe that's that. So the question of what is a hero becomes very central to this claim. And one might just dismiss, just out of hand, the claim to being the greatest hero ever, because having such extraordinary powers like Superman or Tom Terrific, disqualifies one from being heroic. There is no danger to them. They're not doing something that puts themselves in danger, which is kind of like one of the prerequisites of being heroic, right? Is that you've done something that puts you in danger, and you did it anyway, despite the fact that you were in danger. That's what kind of made you heroic to begin with. Maybe this whole thing becomes like a moot issue, because they're just not heroic. They're just like superpowered, and they've got this great advantage, and they never put themselves in danger because they're changelings, or they have superpowers or something like that. That might in fact be the case, right? That makes the whole question, though, a whole lot less interesting. If you reach that conclusion, then is Tom Terrific the greatest hero ever? Just becomes of course not. because he, by definition, cannot be heroic. And in fact, most of his competition for greatest ever is disqualified on the same basis because they have superpowers. They're not putting themselves in danger. They're not doing heroic things. But if one reached that conclusion, like I said, then the whole thing becomes like, yeah, so not, it's over. And then my monologue would have to stop. And I've got like another 40 minutes or however long it takes to finish taping to fill. And so I will just say, not for the sake of argument, but for the sake of having something to mutter on about while I'm taping, masking this piece of plastic here. Well, doing that, I need to have something to mutter on about. And if I reach the conclusion that Tom Terrific can't be a hero at all, then most of what we would consider to be his competition for the claim of being greatest hero ever was similarly disqualified, then I have to find something else to go on about, and I don't have anything. So for the sake of the stream, if not, for the sake of the audience listening to the stream, who would just as soon maybe that the music could still play, so that they wouldn't have to listen to this. But it can't, because we haven't heard that the issue's been resolved yet. Okay. So given that circumstance, unless you want the sound of silence or whatever sound you hear, in the background, mechanical buzzing from your HVAC system or whatever. Let's move on then to the question of which fictional characters might be competition for Tom Terrific's claim of being the greatest hero ever. Well, I'll go to the obvious one, Superman. You have to put Superman in the category of potentially being a claimant to greatest hero ever. Having put aside the question of whether or not he can even be considered to be a hero given his superpowers. Just as a reminder, we have put that aside for the sake of monologue. So let's come up with some contenders. Superman, Batman, they're all man. Aquaman, except unless you're a girl. The Catwoman? Yeah, Catwoman, I think, was a woman, not a girl. Supergirl. I think it was not Superwoman, it was Supergirl, but I think she was like put in kind of comparison to Superboy, because before Superman was a Superman, he was a boy. At some point, you're not a boy anymore, you're a man. That's a thing that happens. So Superman, probably, people will claim that Batman might be there. I don't know if somebody like Aquaman would be in the running for greatest hero ever. I mean, possibly Aquaman. Green Hornet, the Flash. There were a lot of these kinds of characters back then. There were others. There were the villain like the Joker and whoever was the ongoing nemesis of some of these people in the comics. There were a lot of bad guys. The bad guys tended to be really kind of interesting and kind of amusing in some ways. I recall this is kind of interesting. I don't know if I recall this correctly or not. A lot of the bad guys um, were reliant on like technology. It's like they didn't come from another planet that gave them superpowers here on Earth, right? Or they didn't have a certain mutation or a device. Like I don't know what the green, they didn't get bit by a radioactive spider or whatever. But they depended on like machines. I wonder if that was an intentional commentary about something. I don't know. It just struck me as being kind of a thing that happened, and that the bad guys didn't necessarily have superpowers as much as they just had some gizmo. That's a good word, isn't it? Gizmo. Sort of mechanical thing. And they usually had henchmen. You always had to have henchmen, whatever that was, right? Kind of nameless, faceless lackeys that did stuff for them. Instead of doing it themselves. That was kind of a trope about the nature of the bad guys, is that they they had these hangers on who did stuff for them. Superman didn't have that. Batman kind of did, but his butler, right, took care of a lot of things, but wasn't the same sort of thing. The butler didn't go out and do things on behalf of Batman as much as just made sure that the Batcave was neat and tidy. I don't know how this masking is going to work. For some reason, it's just not. It's not as clean and neat as I would like it to be. Anyway, we got off on a tangent there about the different nature of the bad guys versus the good guys, and these superhero, as they called them, kind of things. But yeah, usually the good guy, the superhero, Iron Man, is another man. The naming conventions just were not that creative, right? Oh, you're a watery person, so you're Aquaman, or you like bats, so you're a Batman, and you've got superpowers, so you're a Superman. You're just some guy hanging out. You're a man. Yeah. But it was like a naming, like I said, a naming convention almost. You would just say man, and then name some sort of attribute of that person. Never really thought about it back then. It's just the way it was. So if you were like a kid playing around and you wanted to be, you could be like skipping dinner man, or telling off your mom man. You could do that if you were a don't be instead of a do be. That was Romper Room thing. Do be a doobie, don't be a don't be. So let's see. Yeah, so there are always the some sort of attribute man. There are lots of those that could be in the contention for being the greatest hero ever, making the assumption, starting with the assumption that they qualified to be a hero despite the fact that they didn't ever put themselves necessarily in danger when they were doing things. I just thought there was an exception to that. That Superman was vulnerable to kryptonite. Okay. And so sometimes actually did put himself in danger when he had to do something that could lead to his exposure to kryptonite. So kryptonite came from Krypton, which was his home planet. So Superman wasn't super on Krypton. He was just like a guy. Actually, he was sent off of the planet at a young age, so boy. But had he remained on the planet, he just would have been some guy, right? So why was it that? I mean, it would make sense that in the presence of kryptonite, if it were like being on his home planet, he would just become some guy. But it was more than that. Kryptonite like weakened him to the point of like expiration and death almost. So maybe it wasn't just the fact that it was from Krypton, but there was something about the planet that was actually poisonous to the inhabitants. I mean, that happens. There are things like that, like arsenic and whatever, that there's a substance that's poisonous. But kryptonite seemed to be more than just, reminding him that he was on his home planet and it wasn't super anymore. But that aside, we'll just put that aside. Oh yeah, the other thing about kryptonite is it turned out that there was more than one color of kryptonite and that each one had a different effect. Why? Well, I guess, the writers needed to come up with something, so there could be something that weakened Superman, but then this other one had a different effect. I don't know, did one turn him into something else? I can't remember. I didn't really pay that much attention to the Superman comics, I have to admit. Growing up, I wasn't like a Superman fan. But yeah, so they had different kinds of kryptonite. So maybe from time to time at least, Superman would be a hero even under the definition of the pre-qualification of having to put oneself in danger, okay, in order to qualify as being heroic. Because sometimes Superman became exposed to kryptonite in the course of doing, Superman stuff. So there's that much going for Superman. Is that Superman might qualify even if that qualification was a requirement. But then that takes us right back to Tom Terrific would probably be disqualified because Tom Terrific never put himself in danger. He just did what he wanted to do because he could be what he wanted to be. But anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent based on kryptonite. what was really kind of interesting about that, of course, is that krypton is an actual element, like it's a real thing here on Earth. Okay, it's right there in the same class of stuff as neon and argon, and not freon. Freon's not an element; that's just a thing we made. But yeah, so knowing that there was such a thing actual krypton, why why did the writers choose that as being the place where Superman came from? I don't know, but they did, and questioned it. So the thing about krypton, though, is that it's just like neon, you know, and argon and stuff. It's non-reactive. It's very much non-reactive, and so kryptonite, which would be some sort of mineralic combination of krypton and something else, maybe oxygen, maybe chlorine, could be a chloride, one of the ites, the mineralogy ites, is unlikely on Earth. I mean, it's unlikely that we would have kryptonite, even though krypton, like I said, is a real thing. It's unlikely we would have kryptonite as a real thing here because it's a non-reactive substance. The electron shell is full, so it doesn't combine with other elements. So I guess they could get away with kryptonite as a fictional kind of thing, but it is kind of odd that they would pick something. It's a cool sounding word, right? But fictional thing, they picked a real thing. That could be confusing. Maybe, I don't. People were ever confused by it. Most people didn't care or know about or care about the real krypton. Probably still don't. Who cares about krypton, right? Yeah, so this is, I don't know. This might end up requiring some cleaning up after it's sprayed, because the tape, this white tape, does go around, the curves, but it doesn't necessarily adhere extremely well, like in these corners. Let's see what it looks like after the spray painting is done. Cleaning this up, I wasn't quite sure how much to file down these edges. Guess I'll find out when I assemble it and after it's all painted and everything to find it. Well, I'll test fit it before I paint it. I really will need to do that. I probably should have done it even sooner. But I will have to test fit these, put all four of them on to the base that's over there that I taped earlier to see how they fit, because I may end up having to do some filing and sanding that I probably should have done before I did this, but I didn't. So I'll have to do it after I do this, which will be okay, because if I do filing and sanding, it will be on the edge, which will be painted white and not blue-green, and I should be able to do it without messing up the not blue-green, gray-green, the gray-green color that I'm going to be putting on this. that happens as I do this modeling is that it's, oh, I should have done that first. It's kind of like, the old joke, right? Disarming the bomb. Cut the red wire. But first, so in this case, it's I should have test fit these things when I was going through the trouble of filing and sanding them down before I primed. But I didn't. And then I will probably pay the price later with some sort of thing that I will need to do to fix it. But that will be okay because that'll fill some time on a future stream. I get to go, I should have done that. But I didn't. Which is kind of a recurring feature of relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons is me going, should have done that differently. Should have done that first. Shouldn't have done that at all. Occasionally there is the I shouldn't have done that at all kind of thing that happens. Usually that happens right near the end of something when I've got it almost like done. It's just, this is almost perfect. I should just leave it alone. And then I don't leave it alone. Okay. I don't leave it alone and I mess it up and I have to redo something. That has been known to happen. Okay. Did we get anywhere in our conversation about whether Tom Terrific was making a bogus claim, an exaggerated and narcissistic claim to being the greatest hero ever, or whether in fact Tom Terrific did have a legitimate claim to being the greatest hero ever? I don't think we've gotten very far on that. Did raise some interesting questions, though, complicated and difficult to answer questions about, what is a hero? What would qualify one to be a hero at all, much less the greatest hero ever? And whether or not we should include real or only fictional characters in the comparison, leading to a decision about the claim of greatest hero. So then we started talking about, if we limited it just to fictional. Oh, but Tom Terrific said greatest hero ever, not just like greatest hero in the 1960s in the US comic market. Okay. That wasn't part of it. The claim was greatest hero ever. So, we don't know if some of these characters were real or not. But what about Hercules? Okay. That was a person who maybe did heroic things, maybe regardless of the definition of heroism, did put himself in danger to save himself and the rest of the people who were with him. Tom Terrific, a greater hero than Hercules. So we need to go back to different points in time in order to assess his claim. That makes the whole thing even more complicated. Especially if you're not sure whether or not the person in question was real or not. So if we said you're limited only to you're limited only to fictional characters, what if there's a dispute about whether someone's fictional or not? What's going on upstairs? Okay, well, this is taking a while. It is actually going to use up the rest of the stream. I need to put the paper on the back here, or the front, I guess. In this case, it's actually the front. It's really not going to work because it has holes in it. But I brought new sheets of paper so that I can cut out the parts that don't have holes in it. Yet I want to put paper over the rest of that and tape it down so that it covers it, so that paint is sprayed on it. It doesn't get on the parts that I don't want painted. Okay. I should be able to get this done in the next 15 minutes. I'm just wondering if we can, given the uncertainties that are raised by the question of whether Tom Terrific was the greatest hero ever. And I don't just mean the uncertainties of whether or not Tom Terrific was the greatest hero ever, but the uncertainties about the definition of heroism and ever and real versus fictional, that there are so many open question variables, that we may not be able to answer the question. I mean, it might be an unverifiable claim, just pure and simple. One may not. It may be that we will never know, that we would never be able to reach a conclusion about whether Tom Terrific was, in fact, the greatest hero ever. I mean, then you have to ask the question, Tom Terrific made that claim at a certain point in time. And so the comparisons, do you make the comparison only with heroes, say fictional heroes that existed at the time the claim was made, or because ever means ever, whether in fact we need to make a comparison with any heroes that might emerge in the future? Okay. So maybe Tom Terrific was like the greatest hero ever in 61 or something, but maybe not in 2207. That a greater hero might emerge. Someone would hear that claim, maybe looking at some historical cartoon archive, right, and go, no, Tom. You're definitely not the greatest hero ever. What about what's whoever they are? What about they being whoever is now a hero in 2206 or whatever number I made up before? This, well, on the other hand, there's always another hand, right? We learned that from Fiddler on the Roof. There were lots of hands. How many hands were there? I don't know. There was always another hand. On the other hand, no, I got so distracted about talking about other hands that I forgot what the other hand was. Well, that's a shame. I mean, it might have been interesting, but now we'll never know because I can't remember what the other hand was when I got distracted by talking about Fiddler on the Roof having too many hands. That's just part of the charm of relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, is that going off on a stream of consciousness can lead one to not remembering what one was talking about. That particular bit of consciousness just got lost. That stream went dry. It's a thing to say, isn't it? I wonder how this is, I don't know, this taping, this masking job is just, compared to some of the others that I've done, just not working out as well. hopefully I'll be able to, if there are flaws that show up, I'll be able to correct them, at least sufficiently so that they're not really noticeable when the thing is done. And I'll maintain my B average of model completion thing that I'm working on here. What I'm trying to do here at the very end is not get too impatient and end up taking longer. Sometimes that happens, right? You get impatient, and the impatience trying to cut time out, trying to get things done quickly, just ends up taking more time because things need to be redone than if one had just done it slowly to begin with. I've taught myself that lesson several times on this stream. Not this particular, well, actually, yes, once on this stream already, but definitely other streams of painting with dice and dungeons. What's going to happen to these pieces now? Not now. It's going to be now. If it were now, I'd be doing it now. What's going to happen to these pieces next? I'm trying to be precise in my language. So what's going to happen to these pieces next is that the part that isn't masked is going to be painted a grayish green color, the same color as the insides of the service module, which if you had been watching the stream or caught previous episodes on YouTube or whatever, you would see in the service module that the insides are painted this sort of grayish green color, which is just like a kind of basic primer color for metal. And the outside is painted white, and I'm using a pearlescent white to just give it a little bit of a gloss. And this tape is both it's adhering where I don't want it and not adhering where I do. That's just a thing. The box top is in front of the monitor. I can see, okay. I can see what I'm doing, but I can't see how it's showing up on the monitor at the moment because the box in which these parts are sitting is, I'm hoping I'm on screen. Let me fold this down just a second. Yeah, it's pretty much on screen. That's okay then. Yeah, but the box in which these parts are sitting is covering up my monitor, so I can't see what I think you might be seeing if you're watching this. If you're not watching this, then you won't be seeing it at all, and it doesn't matter. So going back to this whole Tom Terrific thing and the claim of being the greatest hero ever, I think, just talking about it and kind of out loud to myself, because there's no one else to talk to here or converse with. I'm talking to you. That's just talking to. It's not conversing with, which is the correct, the more accurate way of putting a dialogue or a multi-log if there's more than two people involved in dialogue. That's an interesting thing too. Like if you're in a movie or a TV show or a play or something, they call it dialogue, right? Right. But what if it's just one person? What if, there's just one person talking to themselves like I am? That's a monologue, but we still would call it the dialogue when we make a reference to what it is that's happening. That's kind of an inaccuracy that we just live with. because why not? And dialogue implies two people conversing. But if there's like 7 or 8 people all just talking over each other and, making a kind of incoherent noise, all these individual conversations going on, but none of them highlighted, and clear to the listener who's listening to all of it going on at once. Is that dialogue or is that like multi-log? Never thought of that before. Probably because it's just a dumb thing to think about. But there, I thought of it, and so I started talking about it because, there's no music in the background, so it's got to be something. Why is this stuff just... It's so weird. It's like something went wrong with the primer. It was all dusty, and I wiped it down, so there's still some, but not as much dust as there was before. The tape isn't sticking that well. So before I spray paint this weekend, I'm going to have to go over the whole thing and push the tape down to make sure it's adhering to the edge. And the only the upside of that is if it doesn't and it goes over the edge, since the edge is going to be painted white, I can just scrape it off. And then it will be okay. I hope. Yeah. So there's this big part here, and then these 4 leaves. These 4 leaves are hinged around the outside of it. And what I need to do before I go too much further, after I paint the gray-green on it, probably, okay, but before I go any further in terms of masking the rest of it and painting it white, is I need to fit these on to make sure I don't need to clean up the edges more than I have already. I don't know how much the seams between the panels are going to show. I test fit one of these once to just test. I wanted to see how the hinges worked. So I found out how one hinge worked by test fitting one of these, and it was okay. It worked pretty well. I was kind of pleasantly surprised at how it was designed so that this sat nicely on there. Okay, this piece sat nicely on there and then lifted up. I mean, you can't fold it down, but you can lift it like that. The hinge wouldn't work that way, but it lifted up and then folded down. So that was kind of clever, I thought. And it actually worked, at least in the test, but I haven't checked to see if all 4 of those panels fit nicely on this without some of the flashing that's left on the edges interfering with the way they sit. Find out. Okay, so I got, I don't know, some of what I was planning to get done. I did finish the service module. I did have an epic conclusion to the service module construction by actually finishing the construction. So unless it's sitting there in the box on the side there falling apart in some fashion, which who knows, it might be, that's done, as is the escape tower. And it came out okay. It didn't come out terrific. It came out okay. And the okay part is mainly because the parts don't fit all that well together. Okay? They just don't. And I will blame that on the injection molding process and not on me. Casting blame. Somebody else's fault. And, part of it is just my skill level. My skill level just barely matches the skill level of getting this together. It would be so much easier if, as the instructions say, if you decide to paint this, like that was an option. If you decide to paint it, then, right? Well, I decided to paint it, and so that's that's just been taking a lot of time. And unfortunately, most of the painting, look at this, I made a mess. Most of the painting is done off stream because it's spray painting and I can't show that. So this again is the thing I'm working on. The escape tower is done. This bit here in the middle, the service module, is done. This is what I'm working on now, the compartment for the lunar excursion module. When that eventually gets done, I hope so anyway, if I can get the paint right and if the panels fit and if I can figure out how to get the hinge brackets on and hold them on without them popping off whenever you lift these up and turn them, because it puts outward pressure against the cement joint. It's going to push away from the cement joint, not toward it. If I can get 4 of those, or at least most of them, 2 of the 4 like this, to work, that will be great. And then I'll move on to the lunar module, which has some real challenges associated with it. So on Monday, more or less 10, I will be back cleaning up whatever mess happened, assuming I can get these successfully spray painted if I have enough paint in the spray can. That's another thing I talked about. There might not be enough paint, in which case I'll need to abandon this effort for a while and move on to something else until I acquire another can of the gray-green spray paint, which I can't from its original source because they don't have anymore. So I'm going to do whatever cleaning up I need to do. I'm going to test fit all 4 panels to make sure that they actually fit okay on the ring underneath. And I might even, I don't know why I would do this. The service module sits on top of these. And I don't know how they did this for the picture. They balanced it on 2 of them. Only half of that is supported. So there's got to be something in the back there that's holding it on that you can't see because it's on the back behind the picture, right? Out of view. So I'm just going to keep working on this. I don't know how much work it'll take, probably way more than I think it'll take because it always does. And then I'll be doing more masking. I'll be masking the parts that were painted so that I can paint the other side of them. And assuming all of these things fit, if it looks like it's all going to fit, then I'll be able to spray paint that on Tuesday and maybe, if all goes well, assemble this whole thing next week, Wednesday. Which means it'll probably be like next Friday or the Monday after or something. And the other thing that I will be working on is taking these astronaut halves. We got all these astronaut halves here, fronts and backs of sitting astronauts and standing astronauts. And the fronts and backs need to be connected to each other. They need a little bit of manipulation just so that they fit. Like there's a protrusion of plastic on this guy's shoulder, right in the back of the shoulder here. Some flashing that's sticking out that's keeping it from closing in on the back, on the shoulder of the back of the guy. But you can see that when they're put together, even if they're tight like this, there's seams there that, one part like extends over the other side of the other part. On this side, they don't fit together at all, and there's a big gap. So playing around with these guys, cementing them together, and then cleaning them up enough so that they can be primed and painted. That will be another thing I'll be working on. And these are almost like minifigs. Okay, it'll be almost like working on minifigs, except that I need to cement them together and get rid of the seams, which I don't need to do on the minifigs that we print on our rosin printer. Right? I don't need to do that, but with these I will. So these are going to be just, it's just going to be a mess of getting parts to fit, essentially. Put them back in their airtight container here. Hopefully they've got their oxygen supply. Yeah, time to wrap up. Thanks for watching either on the stream or on YouTube. Tell your friends and family and enemies and strangers that they should check in on Dice and Dungeons, both for this stream Okay, during which I am slowly but surely, I guess slowly at least, completing this Apollo stack model. And sometimes I'll be painting minifigs. We're going to be getting some of those, I hear, later. So they'll be painting some of those that will show up as NPCs in our Dungeons and Dragons show, which is the most important part of Dice and Dungeons, the Dungeons and Dragons show, which is on 3 Sundays a month at 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. You can catch all the old episodes on YouTube. You should do that. It is a really, really good Dungeons and Dragons show. I can say that without any hesitation, just as I did. I didn't hesitate at all about making that claim about our show. And I want to thank everybody who's a follower. Give us more followers. Go to YouTube, become a sponsor, or you can go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons and become a patron. And that would be a really cool thing. I will be back on Monday, hopefully with successfully painted parts to this unit that stores the Lunar Excursion module and supports the service module. Hopefully that will be done so that I can clean it up, test fit it all, and then mask it so that I can paint the outside of it so that I can then assemble it. And then I'll be moving on to the LEM. And the LEM has some real challenging features to it that we haven't encountered before, like foil, gold foil that wraps around it that is attached somehow. I don't know how. Or these little windows that are not preformed but need to be cut out of a piece of plastic using this template. That's the window pattern, right? These windows go in there after, I'm assuming after it's painted, because you don't want to paint over the windows. And then all these tiny little rocket nozzles that I struggled with the service module, these things that hopefully are staying on after I attached them earlier. Thanks, everybody. I'll be back more or less at 10 o'clock on more or less Monday of next week. Take care. See you then.